Answer should be 42. You have to do 5 times 4, which is 20, and then divide by 10 to get a 2. Plus 2 times 3 is 6, and then minus 1. So that's 8 minus 1, which is 7. One more. You have to do 4 plus 6 to get 10. Square it to get 100. And then times 5 is 500. Plus the 6 is 506, and minus 200 is 306. Pick a number. The winning number is 3. Homework check. If you have all the work shown, then you can bring it up. If you're missing some stuff, you got to turn it in late. $19 here, 18 with homework. 18 out of 19 is 95%. All right, here come the answers, and I'll read them off as we go through here, and we can look at the work after that if you have some questions. Number 1 is 2 plus or minus I. 2 is negative 3 plus or minus 2I. 3 is negative 3 plus or minus I square root of 3. 4 is negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. 5 is 5 plus or minus I square root of 7 over 2. 6 is 3 plus or minus I square root of 31 over 2. 7 is 7 plus or minus the square root of 61 over 2. 8 is negative 2 or negative 3. 9 is 4 or 2. 10 is 3 plus or minus the square root of 3. Today's objective, we're still in the complex number system, and use complex numbers in polynomial identities and equations. And what we're doing is solving quadratic equations with real coefficients that have complex solutions. So here's a review of simplifying radicals. Let's say you have the square root of 24. Your perfect squares, you don't use 1, but I'll write it anyway. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, let's see, 81. Rarely we're going to have to go up that high. But what you want to do is see if there is a perfect square that can divide into 24. And if there is, you want to choose the highest perfect square that's possible to divide into 24. Which one of these numbers over here will divide into 24? 4. Is there anything higher that goes into 24? Once you find that number, 24, in your perfect square list, even though it's not written, it's less than 25. So you won't be able to use this. You can even do this. Cut 24 in half. Half of 24 is 12. 12 falls in there. So the only thing that's possible is 9 and 4. And of course 9 doesn't go, so it's got to be 4. So you would do the square root of 4, square root of 6. Because 6 times 4 is 24. And what's the square root of 4? So 2 square root of 6 would be the answer. Again, the perfect squares, it's not 2. It's going to be 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 48. Half of 48 is 24, and that falls in there. So the only possibilities are 16, 9, and 4. Which of those will go into 48 evenly? 16, and it's the highest. 4 goes into it, but if you do that, you end up having to simplify yet again. Always choose the highest. So it's 16. Square root of 16, square root of what? 3. 16 times 3 is 48. The square root of 16 is what?
4.
So 4 square root of 3 is your simplified version of square root of 48. Square root of 18, we have 4, 9, 16, 25. Half of 18 is 9, so it falls right on it. So that means you'd have to use 9. Square root of 9, square root of 2. Square root of 9 is 3. So 3 square root of 2 is the answer. Oh, I put 3. All right, there, so it's 2. 3 square root of 2. The highest perfect square that you can divide into 75 is 25. So square root of 25, square root of 3. Square root of 25 is 5. 5 square root of 3. Now some of these you have numbers multiplied by the radical term to start with, but you still simplify, concentrating on that alone. So just write your 2 down, times, and then the square root of 12 is what you have to break up. The highest perfect square that comes out of 12 is what? 4, so it's square root of 4, square root of what? 3. Don't forget your 2. Square root of 4 is also 2. And then simplify the outside. Those two constants multiplied together would be 4. So 4 square root of 3 would be your answer. Try this one. Bring it up. For this problem, keep your 3 and break up the square root of 20 as square root of 4 square root of 5. Keep the 3. Square root of 4 is 2. And then simplify outside to get 6 square root of 5. Now example 1 for what we've really been doing. A negative x squared minus 3x minus 2 equals 0. So we have to find a, b, and c. The a is negative 1, the b is negative 3, and the c is negative 2. We want to find out if it's going to be a complex or a real answer. So we use the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. And b is negative 3, so we square that. Minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 2 for the ac. Now simplify that. You'll have 9 minus 8. Notice you have 1, 2, 3 of those signs in there. That means you're going to come out with minus. It's an odd number. And 4, 1, and 2 is 8. So it comes out to be 1. 1 means we're going to have a real answer. And it makes it really easy when you go back to do the quadratic formula to plug in your stuff. Negative b is a negative negative 3. Plus or minus the square root of 1. We've already completed this part. It would be b squared minus 4ac under the square root sign. And then on the bottom, 2 times a negative 1. So simplify where you can. Double negative here is a 3. Plus or minus the square root of 1 is 1. Then on the bottom you'll have a negative 2. So you have 2 problems you must do. You must do 3 plus 1 over negative 2 and 3 minus 1 over negative 2. Alternate the sign, that's what that means. And we alternated it here and here. So on the top, 3 plus 1 is 4. Divide it by a negative 2 and you get negative 2. On the bottom, 3 minus 1 is 2. Divide by a negative 2, you get a negative 1. So the answers are negative 2 or negative 1. On this practice problem, the discriminant is going to be the square of negative 4, and then we'll subtract 4 times negative 1 times negative 2. That is 16 minus 8, which gives us an 8. Alright, from there we go to the quadratic formula. This means it's going to be real. So we go to the quadratic formula and do a negative b, which is going to be a negative 4, plus or minus the square root of 8. Remember, we already found this, and that's the part that goes under there. On the bottom, 2 times negative 1. So simplify to get 4 plus or minus square root of 4, square root of 2, and on the bottom is a negative 2. The square root of 4 is 2. So now we can simplify, and instead of taking out, and I'll still give you credit if you have it the other way, but as a rule from now on, whenever you have a negative number on the bottom and you can simplify the whole fraction, don't divide by a positive 2, divide by a negative 2, so that you're not left with a negative 1 on the bottom. But if your signs are different on this but still right, it'll still count. So if I divide everything by a negative 2, that cancels out. That becomes a negative 2, and this becomes a negative square root of 2 on the top. Or if you were left with a negative 1 on the bottom, you can't write negative 1 on the bottom. So you really would have been left with no other choice but to change the signs on all of that. So this will be it. Answer to this one is negative 805. The discriminant is the square of negative 8 minus 4 times 1 times 16. So that's going to come out to be 64 minus 64, which is a 0. So when you go to the quadratic formula and you have negative b to start with, that's a negative 8, plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2 times 1. Well, whether you add 0 or subtract 0, it's still going to stay the same. So this is just gone. And you simplify this to get an 8, and on the bottom you get a 2. So the final answer should be 4. Answer is 10.